Let me wish each one of you, those who are here and those on Zoom or Facebook or YouTube, Shana Tova, Shabbat Shalom. May you have a good year. May you have a healthy year. Like our ancestors arriving in Babylon 587 years before the Common Era, facing an unprecedented reality, away from Israel, with Jerusalem destroyed, they made themselves ready to celebrate Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. In a similar way, we prepare ourselves and we observe the Yamim Noraim of 57 and 81. What did they do down in Babylon? If you were to look at Psalm 137, you will find the answer. Al Neharot Bavel, Sham Yashavnu, Gam Bachinu, B'Zacharnu et Zion. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and wept, and we thought of Zion. For our captors asked us there for songs, our tormentors for amusement. Sing us one of the songs of Zion. And we responded, Eich Nashir et Shir Adonai alat mat nechar. How can we sing a song unto the Lord on alien soil? If you notice, they didn't ask themselves if they would sing or not a song unto the Lord, but how? How would they sing that song? How can we sing in a world where we cannot come together in the numbers we did before? How can we celebrate Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur when the world forces us to be apart? What will be the consequences of this prolonged quarantine? To illustrate my point, I would like to tell you a short story. It's the story of a gorilla in a zoo. And this gorilla was taught how to draw. And the first thing this gorilla drew were the bars of its cage. I heard the story, often in connection with the Russian writer Vladimir Nabokov. But whether the story is true or not, it seems to suggest that it's something very deep in our minds that respond to captivity. No physical limitations, but rather psychological impacts of captivity. Something happens in our brains. We have been in a sort of captivity or lockdown, if you will, for a half a year. Of course, we can move around a little bit and go outside, but we cannot do as we did before. The impact of this pandemic on people's lives have been dramatic. People miss the company. They feel cut off. They feel isolated. They feel deprived sometimes of work and sometimes of travel. All of that has made an impact. I heard of a member of ours who lost her husband to COVID-19 after 2 weeks being on a ventilator without being able to see him once again. Others were lucky enough to celebrate a birthday through a window and with the help of a phone, and they also passed away. The rest of us, the single most important, significant impact of the pandemic and its consequences has been, in my mind, the sense of insecurity. People have felt that they don't really know what is going to happen to their health, to their work, to their business, to society, to everyone and everything around them. They don't know how long the lockdown will last, or when the new quarantine restriction will be applied, whether we have to have mask on and mask off. All of us cannot really know what the tomorrow is going to bring. So the question for this Yamim Noraim, these days of awe, is how do we deal with insecurity? Well, I have news for you. The Jewish people have dealt with insecurity before. It has been the Jewish experience for almost 4,000 years. Judaism is about insecurity. Today in the Torah reading, we hear about insecurity. Abraham and Sarah, hearing just a voice, calling them away from their family and their birthplace to a land that they don't know. El haaretz asher areka. God doesn't even tell them where they're going to be. They are traveling to the unknown destination. And later on, the prophet Jeremiah, associated with the destructions of Jerusalem, in the Musaf service will say, Zacharti lach chesed neuraich, avad kerlotayich, lech tech acharei bamidbar lo zerua. God, I have remembered the kindness of your youth, the love of your betrothal, how you're willing to follow me across the unknown, the unsown land. Indeed, how did they really carry on? Because in some ways, they remember another psalm, Gam ki elech batzal mavet, lo irara ki ata imadi. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. That is faith. That is the way in which we deal with insecurity. God, where God is to be found, and call on God, and God is so close to the prophet Isaiah. And the rabbis understood Isaiah in a different way. See God when God is close to us. But Isaiah was really saying, see God when we are close to God. And that is on the day of Rosh Hashanah. And that is today. Now we are close to God. And with faith, we will handle insecurity. The word in Hebrew for security is bitachon. But someone that has faith is called in Hebrew Baal bitachon. How the two words are so intricately connected. The word that deals with insecurity and the word faith. With a sense of security, we can look back to this pandemic in years ahead and come with some strong and positive conclusions. And that's what I'd like to leave you with today. What are 3 lessons that we can learn after we have suffered for so long? The first reflection I'll make after 6 months in lockdown is the capacity of the human being to adapt, to reinvent ourselves. Look at where we are. A year ago, we had 1,000 people here inaugurating our new sanctuary. And here we have perhaps 50, and we have another 300 on Zoom, perhaps more in Facebook, disconnected all over. But with the ingenuity of our human mind, we're being able to put this service together. We have had B'nai Mitzvah outside in this sanctuary. We had weddings, funerals, classes online. As soon as we faced the inability to come together, every resourceful idea came through. The rabbis got together from all flavors of Judaism to celebrate the daily davening, Pesach, Shavuot, every week Shabbat. Service became instantly online, and we were able to adapt our halakha, our Jewish law, to make it functionally for this moment. And we're constantly thinking and planning in ways we had not done before. That is worth keeping in mind. Although there are tremendous societal problems in our city, in our country that are unresolved, we all show a tremendous ability to use the skill that God has given us and to use them for good. A second lesson that we can learn from these difficult times is the fact that each one of us somehow is involved in a story. You are able to plug into some story that carries your life. Yes, you're an expert at Amazon Prime. Yes, you're incredible with YouTube and with Netflix and Hulu and others. But you're basically saying to me that you're involved in a story and how important that is. It happens to me at home. I constantly listen to my wife, Silvana, telling me how much she's involved in the books she reads. It permeates her life. We talk about them for the rest of the day. She cannot put them down. My son Ethan and Lara are the same. They're all absorbed in some story that carries their lives. Our story is carried by the Torah. The Torah is our master story and that we should live by. There we read about captivity and liberation, and we read also about promise of the future. Stories are the way in which we process the experience of life. And our third reflection on this COVID-19 consequence on the human mind is that this incredible experience has affected the entire humanity at the same time. There's no other situation ever, not even World War I or World War II, where humanity was affected at the same time. And because the modes of modern communication, everybody knows about it. That's the first time in history. But hopefully, this global human interconnection will bring us to a new sense in which we value how we relate to one another, in which we improve our communications with one another. Because all of a sudden, we have realized that we are on the same boat. That this virus does not distinguish between a Jew and a Muslim, a Christian and a Buddhist. The forces of nature operate equally to all of us. So maybe out of this comes out a special closeness among humans. Wouldn't that be a great positive outcome? Look at Israel making peace agreements with Egypt, Jordan, and lately United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. So in addition to this ingenuity, story, and universality, we must reflect also on memory. With so many months spent at home, we had the time to recall those we loved. We looked at the pictures of the past. We missed them. And somehow we're trying to learn how they lived. We had a time to reflect in the past and to look forward. In the rabbinic tradition, Rosh Hashanah, the day of today, is known as Yom HaZikaron, the day of remembrance. This theme explains the choice of the Torah and the Haftorah of the day. The story of people got interested in us. not only for the Jew, but also for God, is a day of remembrance. God examines our past, and God re-examines the path that we have followed, and we examine our lives, and we think about what we're doing, how the future we will be. And we go back to the same prayers in the Machzor, and we read them once again that the day before, the year before, and the year before the before. Forever, the same prayers. Mi chiyeh u'mi yamut. Who will live and who will die? From the Unitani Tokev Chazal Levin will sing in a moment. And that will sound this year totally different. Giving everything that we have gone through, experienced, suffer, and endure, the prayers will sound very different today. We will repeat them to fix them in our minds, but also to learn something new. We Jews do not repeat things just for repetition. We repeat things to fix them in our minds and to remember them. Because we are not the same readers. In the new year, when the circle of days begin anew, please remember that in Judaism, this repetition is not a circle, but a spiral that goes higher and higher in spiritual, emotional, and intellectual understanding. Hayom arad olam. Today the world was created, and somehow that should sound different in our ears. Somehow we continue not to take that statement seriously, because this is a time to recreate the world around you, to spend time on the things that you believe in and things that you should value. Ultimately, you should spend time realizing that the things we spend time on are not the things we say we value. If you want to know what you really value, please look at your actions. Embrace the Jew inside of you, because that Jew wants to become something different. Explore how your life should be. Spend time exploring your soul, as you did this morning with a wonderful yoga class by Michelle Marcus. I will ask you, don't repent. Repentance means to regret being bad. I would suggest to you, do tshuva, which means return, because your essential self is always good. And for reasons that may be entirely not your fault, or sometimes your fault, you may be doing something you should not have done. Or maybe you didn't do something you should have done. But you still remain intrinsically good. So return to your essential self. Let that inner self shine. Even a person who never transgresses returns ever closer and turns up the brightness of his or her inner self. Even a person who has committed the most atrocious transgressions can still turn around, because somewhere inside there is a divine self that is always ready to come out and shine. Sitting in the rivers of Babylon, facing an unprecedented reality, our ancestors sang a new song. They gave an answer to their unfamiliar reality. Remember, the question was not if or not. The question was, how will they do that? How we will sing a new song in the new year? From our tradition, from the Talmud, Masechet Megillah, page 31a, we read, Tichle shana bekirelotecha. The year shall end along with its own curses. But we also learn from the Talmud, Tachel shana ubirchotecha, which means, may this coming year, with all of its blessings, come to a good beginning. So maybe this year together, with the newly discovered powers of creativity, story, universality, and memory, we can become an olam chesed. We can build a world of kindness and of goodness. Olam chesed ibaneh. Olam chesed ibaneh. Shabbat shalom and Shana Tova.